Hi everybody, and welcome to Spirit 5. My name is Rai-na. I thought I'd talk to you today a little bit more about reincarnation and also my own understanding of how I came to that realization myself that I've been here before. I'll talk a little bit about when I was a little kid. My mother loves to tell this story about when I was a baby, that every time I looked at my uncle, her brother, I'd start to cry. I would just burst into tears. They thought it was rather funny, and they didn't quite understand why this was happening, so they did an experiment. My mother had me on her lap with my back to the door, and my uncle was on the other side and didn't come in the room yet. So all he did was poke his head around the corner of the door, and I burst into tears. They thought this was hilarious. And I did too later, because I thought, well, I love my uncle. I have no idea why this happened when I was little. There was a time when I was about 3 or 4, I think it was, and I thought it was a dream. I remember waking up and there was a lady in my room, a beautiful lady. I didn't know who she was though, and every time I blinked, she was closer to me. I'd blink again and she'd be even closer to me. And I just started to cry because I didn't know who she was. My mom made her way into my bedroom, picked me up, sat me down on her lap, and she rocked me, trying to comfort me, and I looked over her shoulder. The lady was still there. And I blinked, and she was even that much closer. Well, I obviously didn't calm down for a while. It just made me cry even harder. I got to sleep, I'm sure, eventually that night. But I didn't know what that was, and I never talked about it to anybody. I would have these experiences, and I just never said anything because it just passed right out of my consciousness, I suppose, at some point. When I was 12, I think there was a time where I wasn't very happy at that age, but hey, 12. But I did go to bed one night with tears just streaming down my face. Something must have happened that was not the best, I guess, in my life. And I had a dream. And I was in a place with a lot of gold light. And there was somebody there, up 2 steps on a raised platform, sitting in one of those Roman chairs, you know, the kind that scoop this way and then out. He was a very tall man. I think he had blonde hair and these long legs crossed at the ankle, and he sat back and he had his head in his hand like this, and he was looking at me. And oh, did I love that man. And I knew he loved me. But he was disappointed in me. And I remember thinking, oh, I would do anything to take away his disappointment. What did I do? I was wondering. Oh, I was so sorry. Whatever I did, I would make it up to him. That dream would come back every once in a while over the next 20 years. And I never really understood it any better until one point. When I was 16, I remember being in this little tiny church and there was a bridal shower in the back. But I left probably as they were cleaning up and doing dishes. I left and made my way into this little tiny church, into the sanctuary, and just breathed. And I remember sensing such a presence that it was overwhelming. I swore if I turned around, I'd see something or somebody behind me, but I didn't. But the yearning in me to understand that loving presence was huge. And there were no words that I could use to express it. None. I didn't have it in me. It was beyond words. I've had that a few times too. When I was 21, dealing with reality of having a mother not on the same page as myself, and like truly learning to separate the being a daughter from being a woman, a young woman who didn't have to feel like she was 10 years old if she happened to go home and visit her parents. I was so full of this heaviness, it was a mix of anger and sadness because I was stuck and I didn't know how to move past this particular feeling of being 10 years old when you're not anymore. And I remember sitting there and I thought, well, I'm going to close my eyes. But I'm not going to pray. I'm just closing my eyes. That's all. That seemed to be enough. It's like I felt 3 people behind me go, right, she's ready, here we go. And literally, I felt this heaviness being pulled right out of me at the top of my head so fast. It was like, whoop, and it's like, what? And I wanted to pull it back just a bit because at least it was familiar. This new lightness, I didn't know what that was, but I wasn't allowed. It was gone and it wasn't coming back. So I remember just opening my eyes and blinking, saying, oh, and had to absorb that. And, you know, all these things you don't talk about with people because I don't want them to think I'm crazy. And like I had literally no one to talk to about this stuff. Nobody. I didn't know a single other person that had experiences like this, and certainly nothing that was ever shared with me. But that was the turning point. It's like they said, she's ready. Your spiritual life begins now. And I never looked back. Even though it was this very lovely secret I had, I think, to not share this with anybody. Because, well, I didn't know how. But I was so thirsty to learn as much as I could about like everything. I was reading the Bible. I was reading the Psalms. I ended up reading the Tibetan Book of Dying. I ended up reading about the Quran. I wanted to know about all the different religions in the world, Muslim, Hindu. I wanted to know about Buddhism. I just read everything I could get. But one of the first things that I read that started me on this path was The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. He talked about, especially in this one chapter, about how some people are good and they grow up in spite of having such difficult childhoods. He says it's like they grew up in the palm of God's hand. I had to put the book down. And I think I just sat there for about 15, 20 minutes because I knew with everything in me, with the soul part of me, that's how I grew up. It addressed and put into words exactly how I felt. That was wild. And it just got bigger. I ended up reading books on saints. I went to some of the New Age stores and got all kinds of information about mediums and other people who have had experiences growing up, and it was fascinating reading. I just thought, well, I'm not the first. And I loved it. I loved learning. I was thirsty. And all of this fed everything that needed to be fed in me to understand my place in the universe and understand who I am, this spiritual being in this physical body. That was wild. And one of the coolest things I think I've ever done. Sometimes I've had dreams. When I think about former lives, some of my dreams were like snippets, but so vivid. I knew they weren't your typical working out your problems dream or what you saw on the TV show ends up in your dream that night. None of that. It wasn't like that. It was snippets of reality in dream form. And for the most part, they seemed okay. There were 1 or 2, I think, that really addressed why I love children so much this time, because it is definitely a karmic debt payoff this time. I think in a former life, I remember being this very big, huge person, probably on an island somewhere, and spoke with this huge, big voice, and kids were scared of me because I would be so quick to anger and like, born, and they'd run. I wonder if my dad was one of those kids, because I certainly came back to pay back some of that karma with him. That's okay, it's done. But these people who have these incredible talents, I wonder if it stretches back to former lives. How do you accumulate all of this knowledge in just this lifetime, these few short years? I like to think of Bach. What a talent that was. What an incredible. If Bach lived today, I would hope he'd be the greatest rock musician that's out there. Because he would be. He was like the rock musician in the Baroque era. He had this driving force through his pieces. They just kept going, this inexorable rhythm and energy until it finally rested at the end of the piece. It was exhilarating to listen to his works. I'd like to think he would be awesome if he was around now. I have a friend who's really good in art. She's so knowledgeable. She's like her own walking encyclopedia of art. Go with her to a museum. You're going to hear snippets of things that are so amazing, and her delivery is so smooth and effortless. That's gotta be from before this lifetime too. I know gifted cooks. Oh, magic in their hands as they create this stuff. Really? Just in this lifetime? Really? When I see some actors on stage, I think you know this too, it's effortless. To watch them is to be in a magical world, to see how they are. Really? Just one lifetime? I betcha not. I betcha it's a culmination of other lifetimes that are coming into this one with such experience. What about your passion? What are you passionate about? That came to you so effortlessly, so instantly, this wonderful love that you have for something. Perhaps it is an accumulation of other experiences and other lifetimes. Such good moments that can come also from the past, from different lives. My daughter was my daughter before. I think my son was my son before. And even he was my brother, I bet you, one time. I have had friends that have been sisters and parents to me. And you get aspects of that coming out now, even in our relationship. It's kind of fun. Think about the people in your lives. Think who you have that wonderful connection with. Who do you parent? Maybe you were theirs. I'm going to do one more video with thoughts on reincarnation to round out this series. That'll make 3 in a row. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being with me. And I wish you a very pleasant rest of your day.